Are you ready to learn the truth about how people survived for months in the snow without fresh food? What happened behind the sturdy wooden doors of log cabins in the Wild West in winter completely changes our usual perception of human endurance. Settlers constantly faced the incredibly harsh conditions of the endless plains and high mountains, where the ground froze very deep. Carefully collected winter food supplies became the only reliable barrier between the isolated community and the merciless elements of the cold season. Watch the video to the end to learn the true cost of the hard daily labor required to preserve life in the snow-covered prairies of the American frontier. What if I told you that everything you believed about winter rations was wrong? The basis for survival in many arid regions of the southwestern frontier was not the usual grains, but the amazing mesquite pods. These incredibly hard beans were harvested at the end of a long, hot summer in the endless wastelands of New Mexico and desert Arizona. Settlers quickly learned about this hardy plant from local tribes and made it an essential part of their pantries. The sweet, nutritious pulp inside the tough, tree-like pods provided people with the calories they needed during the coldest months of the year. In winter, this valuable flour became a real lifesaver during periods of acute shortage of other available food. Women mixed sweet mesquite powder with a small amount of warm water to make a thick, nutritious dough. They shaped this dough into small flat cakes and baked them on hot, flat stones near a burning hearth. The dense texture of the finished flatbreads allowed them to be taken along on long journeys through snow-covered canyons. Such food took a long time to digest and provided the body with a steady supply of vital energy in the severe cold. Storing mesquite flour required absolute protection from any moisture and dampness during the winter. Wooden chests with the precious powder were always placed on high shelves away from the frozen earthen floors of the hut. Tightly fitting lids reliably protected the contents from accidental snow dust during severe February storms. Regular checks of supplies became a mandatory ritual for every responsible owner of a log house. The slightest sign of dampness meant that the flour had to be immediately transferred to a clean container and warmed up near a warm fireplace. Mesquite supplies were particularly valuable because of their amazing ability to withstand extreme temperature fluctuations. Unlike wheat flour, desert powder did not clump together into hard lumps during the severe January frosts. This unique feature made it an ideal product for storage in unheated pantries and cold barns. Settlers often traded surplus products for valuable tools or other types of food from passing merchants. Mesquite literally became a kind of local currency in the remote territories of the hot southwestern frontier. Cooking hot soups with the addition of this flour filled the house with an incredible feeling of peace and comfort. The thick, sweet broth warmed frozen bodies after long, exhausting work outside. The woody aroma of the soup reminded them of hot summer days and instilled hope for the early arrival of warm spring. Each spoonful of this concoction was a triumph of human ingenuity over the harsh desert environment. People were genuinely happy to be able to use the gifts of the arid land to sustain themselves during the winter cold. Supplies of mesquite flour were stored in the farthest and driest corners of spacious log pantries. Wooden chests containing this precious powder were guarded as the greatest treasure of the entire small community. The thick, sweet aroma of the desert plant filled the huts with comfort during the fiercest snowstorms. We would be very interested to hear your opinion about this unusual desert product. Please write about it in the comments. Be sure to subscribe to our channel to regularly discover new and fascinating pages of frontier history. I discovered this by accident while studying old records about the food of Western settlers. Coarsely ground golden corn flour was the absolute foundation of the winter diet in the vast expanses of the Great Plains. Huge fields of tall green stalks surrounded every settlement from spring until the onset of deep, cold autumn. After harvesting, the yellow cobs were carefully dried under the roofs of spacious wooden barns in a strong draft. The dry, hard grains were then ground for a long time on heavy stone millstones until they became a homogeneous golden grit. Thick corn porridge, simmering for a long time in a pot over coals, was the basis of every evening meal. This dish was incredibly filling and satisfied hunger for a long time after hard work chopping wood in the cold. Dried vegetables or a little molasses were often added to the pot to give the porridge additional flavor. The steam from the hot corn mixture rose to the ceiling of the hut, filling the space with a sweet, homely aroma. The porridge, which had cooled and hardened overnight, was cut into thick slices and fried over the fire the next frosty morning. Preparing large supplies of corn for the long winter became the main task of the settlers throughout the fall. Sturdy wooden barns were filled with sacks of flour up to the roof, providing confidence in the future. Families carefully calculated daily portions to ensure that supplies would last until the first spring greens appeared. Each bag spent was carefully accounted for by the head of the family to prevent a sudden food shortage at the end of winter. Yellow flour literally symbolized life itself in the snow-covered frontier territories cut off from the rest of the world. On frosty days, women often added corn flour to hot broths to give them the necessary thickness. Such rich soup perfectly warmed people returning from long patrols of the surrounding snow-covered territories. The thick consistency of the broth allowed people to feel full for a long time during the severe January and February blizzards. The recipes for such soups were incredibly simple, but they were what allowed people to survive the darkest time of the year. The simplicity of the ingredients was compensated for by their high nutritional value and reliability in conditions of complete isolation from the outside world. Storing sacks of flour required the construction of special wooden pallets to insulate them from the cold ground. These pallets ensured constant circulation of dry air around the canvas fabric, preventing the slightest dampness of the product. Empty wooden barrels were often placed along the walls of the pantry for additional protection of corner supplies from drafts. During severe frosts, the pantry doors were tightly closed with heavy fabric curtains to maintain a positive temperature inside. The preservation of this strategic reserve directly affected the chances of the entire community surviving the harsh winter. The supply of corn flour gave the settlers firm confidence in the safe arrival of the next frosty day. Warm yellow tortillas accompanied every winter meal in a sturdy log house covered in deep snow. The heat from the stove during cooking perfectly warmed the spacious wooden walls of the hut, which had frozen during the day. The daily baking process required skill and constant attention to the temperature of the red-hot coals. In the next chapter, you will learn how the settlers coped with the harvesting and storage of incredibly nutritious mountain nuts. The hidden truth that everyone keeps quiet about is the incredible value of tiny pine nuts for survival. The nuts of the unique pinyon tree were harvested in late autumn on the steep, rocky slopes of the southwestern mountainous regions. These small, dark seeds contained a truly enormous amount of vegetable oils and vital nutrients. Settlers spent weeks gathering sticky resin cones among the dense, coniferous, rocky forests. Proper harvesting of this product required special skills and tremendous manual labor from all members of the community. The process of extracting the small nuts from the dense cones was a complex and incredibly laborious task. The collected cones were carefully laid out on wide, flat stones near large fires to be slowly heated. The heat from the fire caused the hard scales to open, revealing the dark, nutritious seeds hidden inside. People carefully knocked out the nuts with long wooden sticks, trying not to crush the fragile shells of this valuable product. Sticky pine resin covered the workers' hands, making this process a very difficult and exhausting task. Frontier women often ground the dry, shelled nuts into a thick, fatty paste using heavy stones. This paste was added to morning corn porridge to significantly increase its nutritional value and calorie content. The thick consistency of the nut paste made the food incredibly filling, allowing people to work in the cold for long hours. Sometimes the paste was mixed with a small amount of molasses to create a sweet dessert for special winter holiday evenings. Such a dessert was considered an incredible luxury in the harsh conditions of strict economy of winter food supplies. Storing nuts required maintaining a constant cool temperature and complete absence of moisture in the room. Bags with the harvest were hung from sturdy wooden beams under the ceiling of a well-ventilated cold storage room. This storage system ensured constant air circulation and reliably protected valuable supplies from dampness on the floor. The characteristic strong smell of pine needles and resin constantly hung in the air, reminding us of past autumn trips. The pioneers regularly checked the bags for mold, immediately removing any suspicious darkened seeds. Pine nuts played a vital role in long winter journeys and patrols of snow-covered territories. A small leather bag tightly packed with these seeds was an essential part of any traveler's equipment. The nuts did not freeze even at the most extreme low temperatures and were always ready for immediate consumption. The high energy concentration in each seed allowed travelers to quickly regain their strength without having to build a fire. This natural concentrate saved the lives of many people who found themselves cut off from civilization by sudden snowstorms. Piña nut gathering often turned into a large-scale community event, bringing together entire remote settlements. People organized large caravans of wagons and set off for distant mountain slopes for several weeks. Evenings around the campfire during such trips helped strengthen social ties and exchange important news. The hard work of gathering provisions together made the community incredibly close-knit in the face of the coming harsh winter. The return of the caravan with sacks full of nuts was always celebrated as a big holiday for the entire small town. Bags of dried pine nuts were carefully stacked along thick log walls to protect them from drafts. The smell of resin and pine needles from these supplies constantly wafted through the cool, frosty air of the large storeroom. A handful of nutritious seeds could replace a full meal during difficult crossings over mountain passes. This unique gift from the mountain forest literally sustained the settlers until the long-awaited warm spring arrived. Be sure to like this video if you are genuinely amazed by the incredible resourcefulness of the people of the Western frontier. What if everything you've been taught about soft bread is outdated in the harsh conditions of the Wild West winter? The famous hard galettes were flat, rectangular pieces of incredibly dry and very dense baked dough. This product consisted exclusively of white flour, pure cold water, and a small pinch of coarse salt. Bakers deliberately avoided using any leavening agents or sourdough to create the most monolithic structure possible. Such hard, tough biscuits could lie undisturbed in wooden boxes for years without the slightest sign of spoilage. The process of making proper galettes required considerable physical effort to knead the incredibly stiff, unleavened dough. Men often helped women knead the dense mass with huge wooden rolling pins on wide, heavy tables. The dough was rolled out into an even, thin layer, which was then cut into identical rectangular pieces with sharp, long knives. The most important step was to pierce each piece with special wooden sticks to prevent it from puffing up when heated. These numerous holes allowed moisture to escape evenly and completely from the dough during its long stay in the oven. Eating galettes was a separate and very leisurely daily process. It was impossible to bite off a piece from a dry rectangular slab because of the risk of breaking your teeth. Biscuits were always soaked in mugs of hot water, liquid soup, or hot herbal broth. The warm liquid slowly penetrated the dense structure, turning the rock-hard biscuit into a filling, soft mass. Often, the biscuits were chopped into small pieces with heavy knives before being thrown into a pot boiling over the fire. In camping conditions, biscuits became an absolutely indispensable product for travelers and patrols. Their lightweight and incredible compactness allowed them to carry a huge supply of calories in small saddlebags. The hard rectangles did not crumble during prolonged shaking and did not require special packaging to protect them from the weather. During short stops, travelers simply dipped the crackers in boiling water to quickly obtain hot, filling food. This simple and reliable food technology saved lives during sudden blizzards far from permanent shelters. Sometimes the settlers lightly fried the soaked biscuits in a pan with a small piece of salted fat. This simple action radically changed the taste of the unleavened dough, making it much more appealing and satisfying. The crispy crust and hot, soft center created the illusion of freshly baked homemade bread in the middle of winter. Such culinary tricks helped people psychologically cope with the incredibly monotonous and meager winter diet. Hot food lifted the spirits of workers before they went out into the bitter cold to chop wood. The preparation of huge batches of galettes in the fall brought together all the residents of small frontier settlements. Women spent days on end at hot, red-hot ovens, continuously rolling and drying hundreds of rectangles. The heavy smell of hot, dry flour hung in the air for many weeks of this intense labor. Each finished batch was neatly stacked inside communal wooden storage houses in preparation for a harsh winter. This collective effort ensured that no family would be left without bread during a snow blockade. Boxes of galettes were always kept ready near the heavy entrance doors of each spacious hut. Before setting off on their long journey, the settlers filled their sturdy canvas bags with these rusks. This unpretentious product withstood sudden temperature changes and high humidity, during long, drawn-out blizzards. Each hard biscuit was a concentrated, reliable source of energy necessary for hard work. In the next chapter, you will learn how settlers skillfully preserved their potato harvest from freezing in deep cellars. Growing potatoes on the rocky soils of the western frontier required constant watering and very careful tending. Large, starchy tubers had to be dug out of the cold ground before the first serious autumn frosts. The rich harvest was carefully cleaned of clumps of dirt using coarse brushes made of stiff, dry straw. The potatoes were laid out on wooden platforms under the pale autumn sun for final drying of the thick skin. Only completely dry and undamaged tubers could withstand months of storage in the cold winter conditions. To store this essential product, the settlers dug deep cellars directly under the floors of their wooden huts. A thick layer of dense earth reliably insulated the vegetables from the piercing winter cold and heavy snow. The walls of the cellar were often reinforced with massive logs to prevent sudden collapses of loose soil. A thick layer of dry golden straw was spread thickly on the earthen floor, creating a soft, insulating cushion for the vegetables. Potatoes were carefully poured into large wooden bins, taking care not to damage the protective layer of thin, dense skin. Potatoes occupied one of the most important places in the daily winter diet due to their high nutritional value. They were often baked whole in the hot gray ashes of the fireplace without removing the rough, dense skin. Charred on the outside and incredibly crumbly on the inside, the potato was an excellent hot dinner after a hard day. Thick steam with a rich, earthy aroma rose from the broken hot tuber, warming cold red hands. This simple hot food gave a strong feeling of satiety and helped to endure the hardships of isolation in a snow-covered house. Thick potato soup served as the staple food during the days of the strongest and longest snowstorms. The peeled tubers were cut into large pieces and cooked for a long time in massive cast iron pots over a bright flame. The potatoes partially boiled down, giving the broth a thick, dense consistency and a pleasant, rich taste. Dried herbs or a little salt set aside in advance were often added to the soup to improve its taste. The hot, hearty soup was poured into deep wooden bowls, and the family gathered around the warm hearth for a meal. To increase the shelf life, part of the harvest was sometimes subjected to prolonged drying near a hot, red-hot stove. The potatoes were cut into incredibly thin slices and laid out on clean metal trays in a warm corner of the hut. After drying completely, these slices became hard and brittle, taking up a minimum of space in wooden boxes in the pantry. In winter, the dried potatoes were simply soaked in boiling water and then added to hearty soups. This method allowed part of the harvest to be preserved even in the event of a sudden freeze in the deep earth cellar. Deep, cold cellars dug into dense clay soil reliably stored potato supplies until the warmest spring. The hard physical labor involved in setting up these storage facilities always paid off in the midst of fierce snowstorms. The smell of damp earth and starch in the cellar instilled a firm confidence in the availability of sufficient food. Each potato baked in hot ashes provided energy to overcome the endless series of harsh winter days. The safely stored root crop harvest was the main indicator of the experience and diligence of each individual migrant family. I discovered this by accident while studying the worn pages of old diaries kept by Western settlers in the last century. Live thick bread, sourdough replaced factory yeast for the settlers, which was absolutely impossible to obtain in the endless prairies. This bubbling, viscous mixture of flour and water required constant attention and very careful handling. Wooden barrels containing this valuable growing culture were guarded more closely than any other supplies in a log house. The constant heat from a hot stone oven helped to maintain the fermentation process even in the harshest January frosts. Creating a new starter from scratch was a complex process of capturing wild natural yeast from the air. The pioneers mixed flour with warm well water and left the open container in the warmest corner of their spacious hut. The mixture had to stand undisturbed for several days until the first characteristic gas bubbles appeared on the surface. A specific sour smell was the main sign that the live culture had successfully formed and begun to grow actively. From that moment on, the starter became a full-fledged member of the household, requiring regular daily feeding with fresh flour. During periods of severe, prolonged cold weather, protecting the sourdough starter from freezing became a top priority for the entire family at night. The wooden tub was wrapped in old, thick blankets and placed on a stool close to the stove, which cooled down overnight. The slightest freezing could irrevocably kill the living culture, leaving the community unable to bake lush, soft bread. Housewives often fell asleep late at night, constantly checking the temperature of the barrel with their warm, rough hands. The successful preservation of this capricious product was considered a sign of high culinary skill and enormous responsibility on the part of women. During long winter journeys, the starter was carried in small, tightly sealed tin cans, hidden deep under clothing. The warmth of the human body prevented the living culture from freezing during the many days of travel through deep snowdrifts. During breaks, travelers quickly mixed part of the starter with flour and baked thin flatbread directly on hot stones. This portable bakery allowed them to eat fresh bread far from the stationary, cumbersome cast iron ovens of the frontier. The unique endurance of microorganisms amazed the pioneers, making sourdough their faithful companion in the wilderness. Old sourdough starters that survived several long, cold winters acquired a special, incredibly complex and deep flavor profile. They were often shared with neighbors or new settlers, passing on a part of their culture to other homes. A wooden spoonful of the precious foamy mass could be an excellent housewarming gift in a freshly built log cabin. Sharing the same culture created an invisible bond between all the inhabitants of a small settlement. People were proud of their old barrels, whose recipes might not have changed for many long decades. Sometimes, to add variety to the meager winter diet, a little thick molasses or dried fruit was added to the bread dough. This made the baked goods more festive and lifted the spirits of people tired of monotonous hard work. Sweet and sour bread was considered a real delicacy and was served only on the most special occasions. The ability to prepare such a dessert from basic, readily available ingredients was highly valued in the harsh society of the Wild West. Each successful loaf of bread was a small victory over the scarcity and harshness of the snow-covered environment. The aroma of freshly baked, fluffy sourdough bread was the best reward for a hard, monotonous day's work in winter. The spongy, sour crumb absorbed thick vegetable soups well and gave strength to work in the severe cold. The tradition of maintaining a lively, bubbling culture became a symbol of generational continuity throughout the western frontier. Old wooden tubs with leftover dough were carefully cleaned and constantly prepared for the next cycle of endless fermentation. In the next chapter, you will learn how settlers skillfully harvested and dried apples for long winter evenings. Orchards were planted near settlements immediately after the construction of the first reliable and durable log houses. The harvest of ripe apples was collected in large, deep woven baskets in early autumn before the first heavy frosts. The ripe round fruits were carefully peeled with special thin knives with very sharp steel blades. The fruit was then cut into even round slices to ensure a completely uniform process of long drying in warm air. Thin, light-colored apple rings were strung on strong, sturdy threads and hung in garlands directly under the ceiling of the hut. Drying apples indoors filled the entire log house with an incredibly persistent and rich, sweet fruit aroma. Garlands of sliced slices hung throughout the room, slowly losing moisture under the influence of constant heat from the stove. The housewives regularly checked the density of the rings, carefully moving them along the string to prevent unwanted sticking. It was important to achieve complete moisture loss when the fruit became hard, elastic, and slightly darkened. Under-dried apples could quickly become moldy in closed wooden boxes during long winter storage. After the long drying process was complete, the garlands were removed from the ceiling beams and carefully folded into large canvas bags. These thick bags were tightly tied with thick ropes and hung in a cool pantry to protect them from moisture. Dried apples shrunk incredibly in size, which allowed huge reserves of vitamins to be stored in a compact form. During the cold winter months, this product became the main source of fruit acids in the settlers' very meager diet. The dark, shriveled rings held memories of the bright, warm summer and the rich autumn fruit harvest. Women often took a handful of dried apple rings with them as a light snack while weaving. The tough slices could be chewed for a long time, enjoying their concentrated and incredibly bright, sweetish fruit flavor. This simple action helped pass the time during monotonous, hard work in the dim light of a lone oil lamp. Frontier children considered dried apples to be the best possible treat available in the harsh conditions of isolated settlements. Each ring was associated with the warmth of the sun and was the visible result of long and painstaking autumn labor. Sometimes apples dried to a rock-hard state were ground in a mortar to produce a fragrant fruit powder. This sweet powder was added to hot herbal decoctions to give them a slight sourness and extra sweetness. Such fruit dust took up even less space in the pantry and could be stored in closed glass jars for years. Pioneers highly valued such tricks, which allowed them to make the most efficient use of the limited space in wooden storage facilities. The ability to preserve a part of the summer harvest in the form of dry powder seemed like a real miracle in the midst of February blizzards. The exchange of dried apple supplies between different isolated families was a common practice on the endless plains of the frontier. Those who had large orchards traded apples for cornmeal or beans from their distant neighbors. The barter system made it possible to significantly diversify the meager winter diet of all participants in this natural exchange. Dense bags of shriveled fruit often served as a reliable and stable means of payment in remote areas. The value of this product increased with each new month of the harsh and long, snowy cold winter. The tradition of hanging apple rings under high ceilings became firmly established in the culture of all Western settlers. This simple and absolutely foolproof method of preserving the harvest allowed many generations of brave pioneers of the Wild West to survive. The sight of the drying garlands created an incredible sense of confidence in the successful outcome of the approaching cold season. Each carefully cut slice carried the necessary energy for the difficult struggle against the snowy elements. The ability to preserve the gifts of nature became the main guarantee of successful development of new, harsh, snow-covered lands. Thick, dark molasses had long been the most important sweetener available in the diet of the inhabitants of the Great Plains. This viscous, heavy syrup was obtained by prolonged, intensive boiling of the green juice of sugarcane or sorghum. Huge, round copper vats were set up over hot open fires right on the street during the cool autumn months. Constant, slow stirring with long wooden paddles prevented the sweet, boiling liquid from inevitably burning to the bottom of the kettle. Thick white steam with an incredibly rich caramel aroma spread throughout the neighborhood during this long process. To obtain the initial juice, the long, stiff sorghum stalks were passed through heavy metal rollers in primitive presses. These presses were often powered by the muscle power of people who walked in circles for hours, pushing massive levers. The greenish, cloudy juice flowed into large wooden barrels, from where it was immediately poured into hot copper boilers. The pressing process required tremendous physical endurance and the coordinated work of several strong men at once. Huge mountains of pressed dry pomace were stored nearby for later use as kindling for stoves. In the frosty morning hours, molasses was generously added to hot, thick corn porridge to increase its calorie content. The sweet, thick syrup slowly spread over the hot surface of the porridge, creating an incredibly appetizing, dark, shiny puddle. This simple dish provided workers with a huge boost of quick energy, which was necessary for chopping wood in the severe cold. Children often simply dipped hard pieces of dry bread into a jug of molasses, creating a unique winter treat. The high concentration of natural sugars made this product the most desirable on the table in any log cabin on the frontier. Molasses was also an essential ingredient in baking festive dark gingerbread cookies on rare winter holidays. The sticky syrup gave the dough a deep brown color and allowed the finished products to remain soft and fresh for a very long time. The spicy aroma of such baked goods mingled with the smell of smoke, creating a unique atmosphere of comfort in a small, snow-covered house. The hard, rectangular gingerbread cookies could sit on the shelves for weeks, waiting for their moment during sudden severe snowstorms. Molasses' ability to retain moisture in baked goods made it an absolutely indispensable ingredient in winter cooking. When severely hypothermic or exhausted, people were often given a mug of hot water with a spoonful of molasses dissolved in it. The warm, sweet drink was absorbed incredibly quickly by the body, instantly restoring vigor and clarity to a foggy, tired mind. This simple energy elixir saved many travelers returning from long and dangerous snow patrols. In the absence of medicine, molasses served as a universal, supportive, and strengthening agent. A bottle of this dark syrup always stood on the most prominent shelf in the kitchen of every settler in the Wild West. Heavy jugs of molasses often became the main item of barter when trading with remote, isolated settlements. Those who knew how to boil it down could exchange the sweet syrup for tools, warm fabrics, or other products. The high value of this product was due to the enormous labor intensity of the entire autumn production process. A drop of thick, dark liquid symbolized hundreds of hours of hard work on the presses and near-boiling copper kettles. The settlers carefully scraped the remains of molasses from the bottom of empty jugs, not allowing a single sweet drop to be wasted. Huge orange pumpkins were grown on the edges of vast cornfields under the hot and scorching summer sun. The thick, tough skin of these massive fruits reliably protected the juicy inner flesh from drying out and mechanical damage. After harvesting the rich crop, the pumpkins were split into two equal halves with heavy, sharp knives to quickly remove the large seeds. The bright orange flesh was cut into incredibly long, thin strips and carefully laid out on clean, wide wooden boards. The hot, dry wind of the steppe and the scorching rays of the sun gradually turned the juicy pieces into dry, hard strips. The process of cutting the pumpkin into long, even strips required incredible skill and the use of the sharpest knives in the house. It was important to get strips of exactly the same thickness so that they would dry as evenly and quickly as possible in the wind. These orange strips were often hung on wooden fences around the house, creating a bright contrast with the gray autumn ground. The housewives constantly monitored the weather, immediately bringing all the pumpkin boards indoors at the slightest threat of rain. Once completely dry, the strips became incredibly strong, stiff, and practically weightless for convenient storage. Sometimes the pumpkin strips were soaked in warm water and baked in a hot oven with a little molasses added. This dish was considered a real dessert and was served only on rare winter holidays in log houses. The soft, sweet flesh melted in the mouth, making people forget for a moment about the harsh snowdrifts outside the window. The ability to preserve the harvest in the form of dried strips allowed people to enjoy the taste of summer vegetables throughout the cold year. This was a striking example of the incredible resourcefulness of people forced to survive in the extreme conditions of the western frontier. Pumpkin seeds were also never thrown away, but carefully washed and dried on wide, flat, hot stones. In winter, these dry seeds were lightly roasted in a hot pan, resulting in an incredibly tasty and nutritious light snack. A handful of crunchy seeds helped brighten up the long, dark evenings in front of the dim fire of the only fireplace in the spacious room. They contained a huge amount of vegetable oils, which were critically important for maintaining the body's strength in severe frost. The waste-free use of every fruit was the main unwritten rule of survival for all frontier settlers. Dried pumpkin supplies were easy to transport and were often taken on long winter expeditions across snow-covered plains. The light orange braids did not weigh down the saddlebags and quickly boiled in a pot over the evening campfire. This allowed travelers to enjoy hot vegetable meals even in the most remote corners of the endless icy prairies. The bright color of the boiled pumpkin lifted the spirits of tired travelers surrounded by endless white, monotonous snow. This reliable product has repeatedly saved the lives of those who were caught off guard by sudden changes in weather on the road. The tradition of preparing pumpkin in the form of long-dried strips was carefully passed down in families, from the oldest to the youngest. The process of cutting and hanging the strips in the fall united all the residents of the community in the face of the approaching harsh, cold winter. Bright orange garlands against the backdrop of gray wooden walls served as a kind of symbol of a rich and successful harvest. The ability to properly dry this watery fruit required great patience and knowledge of the local dry climate. Pumpkins preserved in this way were real orange gold in the dark, cool winter storerooms of the pioneers. Turnips, large carrots, and dense beets formed the main basis of vegetable supplies in the cellars of every farmhouse. These incredibly unpretentious, hardy crops tolerated light morning frosts in the open ground of the fields very well. The harvest was pulled out of the cold ground by its thick green tops just before the start of the season of heavy and prolonged snowfalls. Heavy baskets filled to the brim with root vegetables were immediately transferred to dark, cool cellars for long-term safe storage. The proper organization of the interior space of the cellar allowed the supplies to be placed so that the vegetables did not touch each other. To prevent the loss of internal moisture, root vegetables were often sprinkled with thick layers of completely dry river or quarry sand. The vegetables were carefully laid out in rows in large wooden boxes, making sure that each fruit was completely covered with a layer of sand. The sand acted as an ideal natural insulator, preventing the root vegetables from drying out and shriveling during the long cold months. This labor-intensive technology required the preparation of huge amounts of sand during the warm and dry days of early autumn. The result was crisp and juicy carrots taken out of the box in the middle of a fierce January snowstorm. Maintaining a stable and low temperature in the earthen cellar was critical to the survival of these vegetables. The slightest warming could trigger premature growth of green tops, which quickly depleted all the nutrients inside the root vegetable itself. To keep the cellar cool, large chunks of clean ice cut from the frozen rivers in the surrounding area were sometimes brought in. Ventilation vents were regularly opened on frosty nights to let in the icy air, and tightly closed during thaws. The head of the family checked the thermometer in the cellar every day to prevent the loss of the entire strategic vegetable supply. Boiled root vegetables made up a significant and very substantial part of every daily winter dinner in the log cabin. Carrots and sweet turnips were simmered in hot water for a long time until their tough, fibrous natural structure was completely softened. Hot vegetables were served in huge portions, providing people with the necessary fiber and valuable plant vitamins. This simple side dish helped compensate for the lack of any other fresh vegetation during the long 6 months of isolation. For many settlers, the sweet taste of overcooked turnips became the most important and familiar taste of the long, harsh winter. Beets were often used to make incredibly thick and dark soups, which had a warming effect after long hours of work in the wind. The rich burgundy color of such a stew was pleasing to the eye in the endless winter grayness and whiteness of the snowy plains. Dry, hard stone crackers were always crumbled into the soup to give the dish maximum thickness and high satiety. Such soups gave a strong feeling of warmth spreading throughout the body, tired and frozen after a long, hard day. The smell of boiled beets mixed with the smell of wood smoke, creating the characteristic aroma of a pioneer's winter home. Sometimes root vegetables were baked whole in the hot ashes of the fireplace, just like the starchy potatoes that had been harvested. Sweet carrots charred on top acquired an incredibly bright caramel flavor, becoming a welcome treat in harsh conditions. This cooking method did not require the use of clean water, which often froze in barrels during night frosts. The baked vegetables could be placed in the pocket of a thick wool coat to warm the hands during long patrols. This hot food saved travelers from frostbite and hunger in the endless, snowy expanses of the American West. Careful sorting of spoiled root vegetables in the middle of winter was carried out with the utmost attention to every detail and trifle. The vegetables were taken out of the sand and carefully examined by the dim, flickering light of a small portable oil lantern. The slightest dark spot of rot was a reason for immediate removal of the fruit from the common wooden box with supplies. The spoiled parts were carefully cut off with a sharp knife, and the healthy half was immediately sent to the pot for the next dinner. Careful treatment of each grown fruit was the key to the survival of the whole family until the first green shoots of spring appeared. Full boxes of hard vegetables in the earthen cellar symbolized the victory of human perseverance over the harsh climate of the frontier. The ability to keep root crops fresh during long months of isolation required a wealth of practical knowledge. This hard work, invisible to the eye in the darkness of the cellar, provided people with health and the vital energy necessary for survival. The smell of rich, fertile soil emanating from baskets of carrots instilled hope for the inevitable return of warmth and sunshine. These simple, sturdy vegetables were the true heroes of the endless winter battle for survival on the very edge of Western civilization. The harsh conditions of the Western frontier forced people to show incredible ingenuity in the most difficult matters of food preservation. Simple foods such as dried beans, hard biscuits, and golden cornmeal literally formed the very foundation of civilization in the new lands. Every barrel of molasses and every heavy sack of preserved root vegetables was the result of tremendous physical labor. What other aspects of the harsh daily life of the pioneers do you think deserve detailed consideration in our future historical videos? Be sure to subscribe to our channel to continue this fascinating and in-depth dive into the true history of the Wild West.